bull in a china shop. I don't mean to call you a bull, but like that's what you've been doing with the Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton testimony. It's been incredible. Now this sexual assault, like,
dude, how gay is Benny, dude? Dude, Benny is so gay. He is, dude. Like, what is going on, Benny? How is that lawsuit coming against Milo, buddy? How's it cooking up, dude? You got it? Did you post it on your Grindr profile yet?
Vote. It's been humiliating, frankly, for Congress. You're just on a warpath, Congress.
We're on a warpath, Benny, and nothing is going to stop me. And in fact, on that shameful vote on the floor, and thank you to Lauren Boebert, Tim Burchett, and Anna Paulina Luna for having my back on that. But both Republican and Democrat leadership whipped the vote against disclosure of sexual harassment files by members of Congress.
But guys, they did have that vote, okay? They had that vote about revealing the congressional essays, right? That was the vote that they were taking. Nancy Mace had proposed this resolution. Now, I got really upset about this because I noticed a whole bunch of Dems voted to send this thing to the committee. Okay. And I'm like, dude, why would they do that? Including my representative, where the House voted 357 to 65 to block the release of congressional sexual misconduct and harassment reports. And guys, I was pretty livid. I was like, why would they vote to send that resolution? Including like AOC voted to send the resolution to committee. Right? She voted against that thing too. Well, I guess technically it was a yay vote. They were voting whether to send it to committee. So the yeses were like, this congressional misconduct will not be released. And the people voting no didn't want to send it to committee. They wanted to bring this to the floor. But AOC then posted something because somebody was like, why would they vote on this? Here's what AOC said about it. So Molly said, I don't understand why anyone voted against this. This is Nancy Mace's resolution to make public all of the congressional sexual misconduct stuff. And so what AOC said, the idea is good, but the text itself was rushed and not thought through. Now, again, Nancy Mace proposed this thing. So as soon as I read that first line that it was rushed, it was not well thought out, I was like, okay, that does track with Nancy Mace, but she goes into a little more detail here. AOC said it violated a lot of standard practices to protect survivors and due process. It also released documents related to allegations found to be false or unsubstantiated, not just verified violations or settlements. 2, to our knowledge, there was zero victim consent or consultation on this text. That is very different than with Epstein, where victims are centered and consulted at every step. Here, victims offered all their statements with the promise of protection and anonymity. The text gave them no way to have a voice in what information of theirs or their accounts they wanted public or to keep private. That is important because 3, although there was a throwaway line about redacting victims' names, I do believe full witness or victim statements would have been released. With the way employment at the House works, offices are small, time periods of staff employment are publicly disclosed, etc. It means that even with names redacted, you can definitely track details in witness statements and use that to ID victims without their consent. And there was zero mechanism for victims themselves to assert their privacy. So this was another problem, is that, you know, with Epstein, we don't know who, like, all the victims are. Any who didn't come forward, if they redact it correctly, you're going to not be able to find them out. But here, since everybody knows if an accusation was made in, you know, whatever, 2015, it's real easy to find out every female intern that was working in 2015. And you could very easily figure out who the victim of the harassment was. And so they want to have a bill that has very clear protections on how the victims can have that information released about the perpetrator, but without having to out the victim against their will. And so that makes a lot of sense. Because, guys, I was livid about this. I'm serious. Dude, I was running around. Can I just tell you? I was going to Maxine Dexter's page and leaving her messages. I was like, I want answers. Because nobody was speaking up. You know, that was bothering me that 300 people voted to send this thing to committee, and it seemed like a slam dunk, but nobody was speaking up. Nobody was leaving a statement. And then it says here, originally we were supposed to debate the details of the text over 2 days, but for some reason they rushed the vote, so we couldn't iron out any of these details to get this information properly disclosed in a way that guarantees victim safety. If the text was clean, I think you'd get a lot more support. As a survivor, I know why the vast majority of women never report at all, and a lot of those reasons, even if unintentionally or inadvertently, were included here. For me, at least, guaranteeing the safety and agency of victims and survivors would get me to a yes. Obviously, this thing, it came from Nancy Mace. And so my suspicion about this, if you look at it, is you remember her and Anna Paulina Luna were the two spokeswomen about like Trump is exonerated, right? Remember, Trump is exonerated. All the victims, the survivors said Trump is exonerated, which was a lie. But you remember the dog and pony show with Nancy Mace and Anna Paulina Luna? So my suspicion is that Nancy Mace rushed this thing to this like vote, right? She drafted this resolution really fast. Is like, let's get a vote on it so she could say, hey, look, all the Dems voted against this, but they're like trying to release the Epstein files. I think she was trying to make the Democrats look bad because she rushed a resolution with really piss poor text that didn't have victim protections, that she knew all the Dems were going to vote against. They didn't even have the typical 2-day period to modify this thing. And she just rushed it right to a vote. And so all the Dems voted to send it to the committee. But now look at what Nancy's been tweeting. She was going on Benny Johnson talking about it. Both Republican and Dem leaders whipped the vote against disclosure of harassment. So the two-tiered system of justice, blah, 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 the elite, rich, and powerful. And right here, I don't want to hear a word from any of those members of Congress, right or left, that voted to hide the files. I don't want to hear Jeffrey Epstein's name come out of their mouth. And there you have it. So she was pulling some shit where she's going to bring something that they're not going to vote to put on the floor. They're going to send it to committee because it was poorly written. But now she's like, I don't want to hear them talking about Epstein. She's trying to make all the Democrats look like inconsistent or look like they're talking about Epstein should be disqualified. And so that is what she's doing. And then, of course, she's going on Benny Johnson. She's doing her little PR tour talking about this.
So many different metaphors. Bull in a china shop. I don't mean to call you a bull, but like that's what you've been doing with the Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton testimony. It's been incredible. Now this sexual assault, like,
dude, how gay is Benny, dude? Dude, Benny is so gay. He is, dude. Like, what is going on, Benny? How's that lawsuit coming against Milo, buddy? How's it cooking up, dude? You got it? Did you post it on your Grindr profile yet?
Vote. It's been humiliating, frankly, for Congress. You're just on a warpath, Congress.
We're on a warpath, Benny, and nothing is going to stop me. And in fact, on that shameful vote on the floor, and
there it is.
Thank you to Lauren Boebert, Tim Burchett, and Anna Paulina Luna for having my back on that. But both Republican and Democrat leadership whipped the vote against disclosure of sexual harassment files by members of Congress. So the two-tiered system of justice, the rich and powerful and politically connected, there's a tier for them, which is skate away, just like Epstein. And then, there's a justice system for everybody else. You would never be able to get away with that in the private sector or in the rest of America or in middle America. You'd be fired. You'd be excommunicated. You'd be, shamed out of your community, your church, whatever. But, in Congress, just sweep everything under the rug, hide it. And I don't want to hear a word from any of those members of Congress, right or left, that voted to hide sexual harassment files. I don't want to hear Jeffrey Epstein's name come out of their mouth.
There you go. That's what it was about, guys. It was about trying to discredit all of the people pushing for the Epstein files. It's like really crazy because she signed the discharge petition. So did Lauren Boebert. But now, guys, they're like, now that the thing's out there, they're trying to like derail it at every turn. They're trying to protect Trump at every turn. Now, I realize Nancy Mace, she's in a pickle, guys. She is, because she is running for South Carolina governor. She is going to lose. She is going to be out of Congress. Okay, she's done in November, right? She's done in November when she loses in the South Carolina governorship. Actually, she'll probably be done before then because the primary's happening this summer. But she will be no more. We're just going to see her screeching on the internet. But she's going to be out of politics, guys. And I think now she is like desperately hammering away, hoping beyond hope that Donald Trump will like throw her a bone and try to help her get elected in South Carolina. But I don't think he will. I mean, she signed the discharge petition. Even with what she's doing now, the discharge petition has caused such a huge headache. Like, there's no way, dude. He's not, but she's done. She is done, guys. Oh my God, it's so good. But that's what it's about, okay? That's exactly what it's about. And now look, she's doing this shit. AOC voted against releasing the harassment records of members of Congress, but wants to lecture you on Epstein. So now she's making like anti-AOC content about like, trying to say, oh, she can't talk about Epstein. It's a Nancy Mace scam. Again, like everything she does is just a con, dude. Everything she does is a con. Here it is, Nancy Mace. The loudest voices screaming, release the Epstein files, just voted to bury the sexual harassment files of members of Congress. Right? All of it, dude. It is just one con after another. Here's another one with Tim Burchett. I don't want to hear another word about Epstein. 90% of the House voted to keep it covered up. Bloody, bloody, blah. Okay, here's Anna Paulina Luna killing the bill, exposing the slush fund. Bloody, bloody, blah. They're just trying to kill the Epstein shit.